You know, the funny thing about the human condition is that there are many sentiments that we agree to them on a theoretical level, but deep down in the subconscious, they haven't truly seeped in. No matter how much we try to force this idea onto ourselves, there seems to be a difference between knowing the thing and truly internalizing it. I have a horrible issue with perfectionism. And no matter how many times I've told myself that the solution to that is to just simply create without judgment and to not overthink it, that's only something that stays within my mind for perhaps the first 30 minutes of me working on a project. And then once again, I fall back into, bad old habits. I think a great example of this is how I've been sitting on this bench for a good 15 minutes now, and I haven't started recording up until now because I was trying to find the perfect thing to say. And I didn't want it to be scripted, which is kind of what led me to just sit down and stare at nothing, trying to think about the perfect thing to say until I kind of forced myself to just take out my microphone, turn on the camera, and just start filming. Today, I want to change that. I honestly am not sure how, or what I'm going to do, frankly. But I feel like filming myself and holding myself accountable to a larger audience, hopefully assuming there will be an audience, hopefully that'll be enough to help me at least somewhat stick to, actually committing to making music and trying my darnest to not overthink things and try not to be too perfect. I have a backlog of, I would say, a couple dozen song ideas that I've made in the past, I would say, year and a half, something like that. Most of them are just, a 4 or 8 bar loop with some basic idea that I spent maybe 2-3 hours working on. I think I have a lot of solid ideas there, and I want to take those ideas and turn them into full tracks. So today I'm going to be starting off with one of those ideas. Let me show you what I got. I've been stuck thinking the same things. Past echoes won't leave my mind. Running through the smoke screen. Second guessing, inspiration filled my lungs. Will it be long till the sunrise? Oversaturated, I try to breathe, but my lungs still full of holes. Soul aches for home. Yesterday's a thing of the past, yet the echo still won't fade. Afraid the demon's here to stay. And if I close both eyes for a second, won't you allow me a moment of silence before you read my soul? Sun so warm, yet my skin feels so damn cold. I've been stuck thinking the same things. Past echoes won't leave my mind. Running through the smoke screen. I'll just stop that there, because now this just kind of repeats the first section that we heard. I also have this little section afterwards that I think is quite nice. So this is at the end of the chorus, I guess. I'll be honest with you, listening to this, I think it sounds quite nice, but I honestly don't even know where to start now. So I'm going to take several moments to think about it. And thought about it, I did. Perhaps I thought about it a bit too hard. I started overanalyzing the tracks and trying to think about what's the best place to do, where's the best place to start. But the issue is that creation is not something that can be done through logical means, or not purely logical means at least. It's not an equation that you can calculate how to perfectly execute it. It is something that's a lot more intuitive. You gotta feel it. You can't just think through it. Luckily, I caught myself in time and stopped myself from falling down this deep rabbit hole. Let's just fucking do some work. Holy shit, shut the fuck up. After another listen through, I found myself wanting to fill out the gaps that I had in the chorus and afterwards when it came to vocals. So I just recorded 2 quick ideas. Although this vocal performance was nothing to call home about, and it may seem very insignificant, this was a pivotal moment for me because it kind of started to get me into some kind of flow, albeit a very choppy flow, but a flow nonetheless. And although the vocals did give me a little bit of direction, it still took me a little bit to really realize what I'm going to do next. You know, to be fair, this is a project that I haven't touched for the better part of a year. So it took me a little bit to refamiliarize myself with the track again. On top of that, it's been a while since I've actually tried to make a full song. As I said previously, I've done little snippets of songs, I've generated ideas, but I haven't built a full track that starts and ends and feels complete in fucking forever. So I was slowly learning the ropes once again. In this specific video, I didn't do much. However, in the following days, I had much more significant progress. But I digress. That's completely beyond the point. What does matter, however, is the idea I had to continue the second verse. So I felt like there needed to be some kind of toning down of the energy. So I had the idea of continuing the second verse with this halftime kind of section. And so after dilly-daddling for a little bit more for some goddamn reason, I finally made some progress and recorded the bass. I'm just gonna start off, right? So I'm gonna... Honestly, something like that is good enough for me. Straight after the bass, I went for the next most logical thing, which was the keys. Now, I always struggle with chord progressions, even though I would say that my music theory knowledge is pretty good. But I have this issue where I can come up with a nice chord progression, but it's hard for me to then create a separate section with a different chord progression. And personally, I don't like repeating the same chord progression between sections. I think it's okay in music and it sounds good and it has its place, but I personally just try to strive to always build something different. But the issue is that this track up until now has been more or less using the same chord progression for the entire song. Although there are variants here and there, it's very consistent and it's very clear, and suddenly trying to do something different just felt very wrong. It felt like you're suddenly diving into a different song, or maybe I just needed to come up with a better transition. But frankly, I kind of just gave up. You know what? I'm just gonna literally verbatim take the chords from here, right? Oversaturated. And it's okay, because it worked, and it sounds good. And I don't need to reinvent the wheel every single fucking time that I make music. And I need to come to terms with that. There's a time and place for drastic chord changes, but not every single song requires that, and that's okay. Worst case scenario, after I have a more fully fledged idea, maybe I could play around with the chords and find something better. What matters now is not getting out of that flow state and actually continuing to roll through it and keep on moving and keep progressing. This is exactly why I never finish songs, because I get hung up on little details like this. Anyway, so now that the harmonic basis is there, since the only thing that's really halftime in this section is the drums, that shapes a large part of the feel of the section. And so I felt like that's one of the more important things to nail down before I continue to develop the section. And I gotta be honest, I took an embarrassingly long time to create this section. However, I like how it turned out. For some damn reason, I started off by looking for hi-hat loops, which is weird because I still didn't have even a kick and snare in place. So I have no fucking idea what was going through my mind, but it definitely wasn't thoughts. So after wasting a couple of minutes looking for God knows what, I finally did it. I recorded the kick and snare. Now, for your own safety, I recommend if you're not already sitting, that you sit down and prepare yourself. Plant your feet firmly on the ground because this shit is about to knock your fucking socks off. Wow, that was fucking riveting. So I felt like the snares weren't hitting as hard as I wanted them to in this section, so I decided to layer 2 more sounds on top of them. So I started looking for similar snare adjacent sounds to layer on top of the snare. And I noticed something very strange while I was editing the video. I was gonna make a whole bit about scrolling through your sample library and finding the perfect snare or whatever, but for some reason you can't hear the snare on the screen recording. And then I noticed that you also can't hear the metronome. So I'm concluding that most likely the reason why is because the way that I'm recording my audio is through a plugin that I set on the master bus in Ableton, and that sends out the audio to OBS. Because for some fucking reason, you can't really record it directly when you're using a sound interfaces drive. I don't know why. If you've ever recorded a video and tried to record your DAW, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Either way, I'm gonna need to figure out how to fix that. I mean, I don't know if it's really that necessary, but it kind of bothers me, so if anybody knows how to fix that, please do tell. Anyways, these are the 2 samples that I found that I decided to layer on top of the snare. And this is how the snare sounds with those 2 extra layers. To add some more emphasis on the snare hit, I decided to add in kind of a sucking effect. So I resampled the snare, added a reverb, tweaked the reverb until I found settings that sounded nice, and then freeze and flatten it, and reversed it. Okay, yeah, that's fine. But I felt like it was missing something. So there's this one song by our favorite non-controversial artist, Monster. Basically, it's a song that has a bunch of artists in it, and one of those artists is Nicki Minaj. Towards the end of her verse, there's this section where everything kind of stops playing except for the 808s and her voice. And then there's this cool effect that they do with the delay where before every single sentence or line, I guess you could say, there's kind of like a delay that fades into that line. I don't know if I explained that in a way that's intelligible, but go ahead and listen to that song, Monster by Kanye West and like fucking 10 other artists. It's somewhere between the middle and the end of the song. I don't remember exactly where it is. So I'm kind of obsessed with that sound, Like I've always heard reverb suck-ins, but I've never really heard somebody do it with a delay. So I always look for an opportunity to have that kind of effect. So I found a good delay setting that I like, I freeze and flatten, yada yada, the whole process. And this is what it sounds like together with the reverb. To get it to sound as good as I possibly can, I spent several minutes tweaking it until I gained sentience. I feel like I spent too much time on what is essentially just a texture, and I probably could have gotten better results much quicker. I just found a sample that exists, but whatever. In this moment of clarity, I realized how, although this sound is cool, it's really not necessary for me to do, I could have done so much more with all the time I spent on this. In life, you only have so little time, and you need to make sure to use it properly, or else, one day you're gonna look back and regret. After that moment of clarity, I went back to tweaking for around 12 more minutes. But, overall, I don't regret how much time I wasted on this, because, it led to a really nice sound that felt pretty polished. I went on to try to add a couple more things, like I tried to add live cymbals from a drum kit. That didn't really work. I didn't like how that sounded. I just added some hats. This is what the whole drum section sounds like. I'm not joking, it genuinely took me close to an hour. It may seem like I basically made nothing, because I did basically make nothing, but it took me an entire fucking hour. Although this entire session wasn't very productive, I would say, because I really didn't achieve much. I think something that I'm starting to understand on a more intuitive level is building horizontally instead of vertically, which is just so funny, because throughout most of history, when a person created music, I don't feel like they were really thinking about 4-bar loops and shit like that. You valued songwriting over orchestration when you were first writing a song, which makes sense. But in our day and age with DAWs, that's not the case. It's so easy to, build a 4-bar loop and spend 3 hours making it the best 8-bar loop you've ever heard. But then you just don't know where to go from there because you've heard that idea so many times that you just you can't hear it being expanded on or changing in any way. And I feel so stupid because, no shit, this is intuitive. Of course, that's how you would write a song. You need to know where the song is going, where it's starting, where it's ending, at least somewhat, before you could really build out separate sections. I just hope that from now on, I truly will learn from this and will continue working like this. I know that I most likely will fall back into my old ways because that's just how life is. I just hope that I always find my way back to here. Because I gotta be honest, I've been in this rut for years now. I just kind of forgot the most basic intuitive things, Anyways, this time for real, I'm done with this tangent. I'm gonna let Past Me take over for the outro. Okay, so I'll be honest. After all this time, it's been around an hour and a half. Fuck.